What is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now today I've got for you 5 revenge stories which you're going to absolutely love. Make sure to drop a like on this one and subscribe to my channel if you do go on to enjoy these stories. Without further ado, let's get into the first one. I made my Trump supporting roommate rethink his choices and position in life. Hi everyone, my name is Neil and I'm here to tell you guys a story about me and my roommate. I voted Kamala and despise Donald Trump. My roommate, because he sucks, decided to vote for Trump, as he has in every election since he's been allowed to vote. To answer some questions and give some context, my roommate and I have known each other since we were children. I've grown up with the guy, so when he was dumped by his ex 6 months ago with no job, I gave him a place to stay immediately. I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, which I pay for myself, and I had the master bedroom open. I like to give guests their own bathroom. He's lived here almost 6 months now and has paid exactly $0 in rent or bills. I also give him free access to any and all weed I have, Medcard. He was originally supposed to start paying rent 2 months ago. I've let it slide though because he's working towards a job that he really wants. Now, my roomie has always been a bit of a cocky idiot. I still love him because he generally manages to be a decent dude despite being a Trumper, and after the election results, he was in rare form today. He'd been up late drinking and made a Facebook post saying, "I'm dedicating today to making liberals mad," at like 4 AM last night. So, as I'm working today, paying the rent and bills in the apartment we both live in while he contributes nothing, I get on Facebook and I see this. So I comment, "Well, if that's the vibe, I think you should dedicate today to finding somewhere else to live. After all, no more handouts, right?" After he wakes up, he proceeds to delete this and other haha Trump Facebook posts, withdraws his last remaining $25 for me, leaves it on the table, and I'm now at the bar with that money while he sits at home alone and bored with people asking him what I was talking about, including a girl he was talking to and he hadn't mentioned the reality of his living situation to. Beer has never tasted so good. Okay, now the Trump versus Kamala stuff is one thing. I don't want to get political, but yeah, it's probably pretty obvious if you watch my videos a lot that you'll know where I stand on that. However, I think that the problem here is not really who your roommate is supporting or supports in the election. It's more the fact that he's lived with you for 6 months and still doesn't have a job and still isn't contributing to your living arrangement at all. That is really concerning. Somebody actually said in the comments, which made me laugh, "It sounds like you don't have a childhood friend or a roommate, but actually a pet," in the sense that this person is doing nothing for you at all. I mean, to be fair, at least a pet would provide you some sort of enjoyment, right? Or entertainment. But you're having to fund their life entirely and they're not doing anything. They're just living. It's crazy. Somebody else said maybe it's time to dial back on his supply of free weed. I mean, who doesn't get a job, like even a part-time one, a temporary one, while working towards their ideal job, in quotes, for 6 months? That is ridiculous. You can't just, go for that length of time, half a year saying, "Oh, I'm working towards a job that I really, really want," and then have nothing, have no income for 6 months. That's insane. Okay, now moving on to our second revenge story. Neighbor was stealing water from my supply, so I ruined him. I live in Asia, and I just purchased a new house. Now, the previous owners were family friends who needed cash urgently and haven't been living in my country for nearly 3 years, so I got it for a great price in the middle of the capital city. The sale was finalized at the start of this month, and I moved in right after. The house was definitely a fixer-upper, as the previous owners had left mid-renovation and the main door was locked with just a padlock, not even a door lock. The house had no gates, meaning that anyone could just walk right on in. The first day I moved in, someone's bike was parked in the garage. I just parked it on the road, and on the same day I had a gate installed. An angry man was knocking on my gate later, and I didn't bother answering, but through my window I could see him giving up and taking the bike after 15 minutes. So already I wasn't digging the neighborhood. But I didn't have any incidents after that, aside from people not knowing that this was no longer an abandoned house. So my gate was blocked more often than not, but a no parking sign on my gate fixed that issue. Last week, I was having a shower in my bathroom and I noticed my water pressure was lower than usual. I also heard my next door neighbor's water pump going. Now, this neighbor, an old guy, lived in a 3-story house, the first being the lowest and the one he lived in. The other 2 floors were rented out to tenants. This guy wasn't happy about the house being sold and voiced many concerns to my friends, the previous owners. He was super angry about it, and my friends did warn me, but I'm a 6-foot guy with 3 dogs. No way he was doing anything. And yep, he didn't. So with this living situation, a water pump is needed to pump water to the tanks on the roof, since the public supply pressure is not enough to get it up 3 stories. Now, I heard the water pump going and I immediately was suspicious. Sure, coincidences exist, but it wouldn't hurt to check it out. I waited till his pump turned off and then turned on different taps in the house. Sure enough, the pressure was back to normal. This made me even more suspicious. But if he was stealing water, it also made sense. The water bills had been going up over the years this house wasn't lived in, but the house also had some water leaks, so it was chalked up to that, even if the bills were too high to be caused just by leaks. Now it's starting to make sense. At some point in the last 3 years, this old miser thought he'd saved the cost of paying for water and waltzed into the property and is siphoning water from my lines. I couldn't find where exactly he was siphoning water from, but after checking my pressure multiple times, I was pretty sure. So I sat on it for a few days, thinking if I should confront him, go the legal path, or just let it be. Now, water in my country is very cheap. My total bill, even with washing 3 animals, a car every week, and watering my garden, only cost like $5 a month, even with the neighbour also stealing some of it. I have to say, that's actually unbelievable. Wow. But it wasn't about how much I was paying or who was paying for it. It's about entitled old people who think that they're deserving of using other people's resources without paying for them and then getting away with it. It just didn't sit right with me, and I really wanted to teach him a lesson. That's a very good point. Who cares about the money if it's only $5? It's about the principle. What I did was really simple. I just turned off my water from the mains. I wouldn't have to break into his property, nor would I be breaking any laws. It was the best way of getting back at him without needing to even lift a finger. So, on Monday, just 4 days ago, I waited until the pump flicked on and I turned off the supply. Now, the way household tanks work in my country is that there's a ball valve in the tank which detects the level of water and turns on the pump. If the level doesn't increase, the valve stays open, which electronically sends a signal to the pump to stay on until the level gets to a point at which the valve closes and also shuts off the pump. However, the level wasn't increasing, and anyone knows that starving a pump of water isn't a good idea. This way, my expectation was that I'd burn out his pump and cause issues with his tenants. What I didn't account for is that his pump running constantly would mess up the fuses by constantly drawing power overnight and absolutely destroying his wiring. If he decided to upgrade his household wiring to a more modern standard, this would have been prevented, but this house clearly still had 90s era wiring. At around 3 AM, I heard all residents in the house waking up, talking in hushed voices about why does just their house in the neighbourhood not have power or water. I found out about the power parts because the tenants devolved into shouting at their landlord. Our tenant protection laws are very important, and power and water are classed as essential even on a state level. Cutting those services is grounds for lawsuit, unless due to weather or some other unavoidable reason. In this case, the landlord is responsible for keeping the house wiring up to date and in good condition, alongside the supply of water. So the tenants were not happy, and one of them immediately moved out 2 days later when they were informed that water and power will not be returning the very same day this happened. Both tenants in the 2 floors lodged a complaint with the police, and if a person is in clear breach of laws, the police have the authority to fine or penalise the person without a court judgment. It can be challenged in court if the person thinks that they were unfairly penalised, but they still have to pay the fines and will only be refunded if and when the court finds the fines unlawful. So now, the landlord lost both tenants and has to pay a fine of $500, which is a lot of money in our country. He also has to refund the security deposits of both tenants and cannot rent out until both issues are fixed, which of course will cost him more money. As of right now, he's moving out on Sunday to his daughter's place since he cannot afford to live alone. The tenants were his only source of income, and he's a retired mechanic, so he has no other income. He did find out why the motor kept drawing power, overloaded the wiring, and burned out. He came by to my gates and asked me if I turned off my water, and I said, "Oh yeah, my tank had a new leak on a pipe, and I turned it off till the next day until the plumber came by to fix the issue." Guys, the look on his face. He kept a straight one, but I just knew he was holding back. He just said, "Oh, okay," and went back inside. I'm not sure if he knows that I know, but I don't care because he can't do anything. I'm getting a plumber down next week to correct my plumbing and remove any pipes that leave my property. So I got rid of my water issue and a neighbour who could potentially be a pain in the butt by simply flicking a tap off. 2 birds, 1 stone, I'd say. Wow, I actually love this story. I actually can't think of any other revenge story that I've read, apart from stories where, you know, you just let someone cook and they just do everything themselves. Like, you know, someone's in the wrong and you're like, they're gonna keep doing things badly here. They're gonna dig themselves into an even bigger hole here. I'll just sit back, relax, and let them cause their own sort of downfall. But in a revenge story where someone's actually done something, I can't think of any other story where someone's had to do as little as this. I mean, literally just turning off their water supply, and has caused such a meltdown and such good and warranted revenge. Let me know, by the way, in the comments. You guys are better at remembering the stories I've read than I am, somehow. I don't know how you guys do it, but you remember pretty much every story. So yeah, if you've been around on the channel for a while, try and jog my memory. Give me a comment down below. Have I read another story like this where someone has done so little to cause so much despair, agony, and pure joy, to be honest, from my perspective. Now moving on to our third story. This one comes from r/traumatized them back. Oops, I think I broke him. Let me set the scene for you. I am a 31-year-old woman, and I'm visiting my boomer father from out of state. We're sitting around the dinner table with the rest of my family talking. My parents split when I was 13 or 14. They've both remarried, but my father absolutely cannot let it go, and he still trashes all over my mum to this day. Also, he recently developed this weird sense of accomplishment and brags that you have to raise kids to be insecure, because in his mind, the only way for someone to think of other people is to guilt them into it, so they learn to guilt themselves into it. Great logic, man. So he's actively boasting his successes in raising kids to be insecure, and I flatly say, except that it turned me into a doormat. I sought the approval of other people so badly that I just let anyone use me, especially as a teenager. My father sees this as an opportunity to trash my mum and says, yeah, your brother told me you used to sneak boys over to your mum's at night. That would have never happened if I'd gotten sole custody of you instead of your mum. My response? Actually, it probably would have happened a lot more. In fact, the very first time it happened was here. Let me tell you, the shock on his face was freaking priceless. He was almost too dumbfounded to ask, what? I tell him, yeah, I used to take my window screen out and have them climb through the bedroom window. His jaw on the table, I delivered the final blow. Oh, and by the way, I was 15 the first time. He was 20, so a man, not a boy. That tends to happen when you're so insecure that you'll do anything for approval. And that's when his brain broke. I have never seen him back away from a conversation so quickly. He had no clue how to respond to that. So he just changed the topic, which honestly stood out way more than if he'd actually responded to what I said. Yet that somehow is the worst part of all of this. Him not addressing the fact that you just admitted to him that you were assaulted in his house at the age of 15. Wow, this is maybe one of the worst fathers I've ever heard of. If you were to ask him about that conversation now, OP continues, I'm 100% certain he's wiped it from his memory. His small mind cannot fathom it, so I'm not surprised when he acts like it never happened. He still brags about raising kids to be insecure, but honestly, having that lasting image of the shock on his face, that is all I need. I mean, yeah, as I said during that, like, what's happening to me right here, guys. I imagine is sort of what happened to your dad, OP, in that moment, where he just had no idea what to even begin to even think or say. So he cowardly just changed the topic and didn't even address it. I mean, what a terrible human being. It's meant to be your father. I mean, anyone that hears about someone being assaulted and then just says, okay, moving on anyway, what are you doing this weekend? It's just a terrible person. Sorry. Wow. What's crazy as well is that even after that, he still continued on about, you know, like raising your kids to be insecure as like a good thing. Like you're saying at the end there, he still brags about it. How can you brag about that when you've now learned from your daughter what happened? It makes no sense, but at least you made him think, I suppose. I mean, this is a sort of person that is never ever gonna understand really, like, you know, right from wrong. I don't think. I mean, their morals are clearly all over the place, but hopefully you've made him at least stop and think for 1 second that what he does or how he lives his life or how he parents is just obviously plain wrong. Okay, moving on to our next story. Going to invite unwanted guests to our wedding after we already said no? Watch this. This was a few years back, but it's still a goodie. I wasn't on speaking terms with one of my brothers, and for good reason. He tried to start a fist fight with my now husband, and his wife threatened to shoot me. Wow. At the time, we were enraged, and I made it clear to both my brother and the rest of the family he wasn't invited to the wedding. However, my mother took it upon herself to reach out and say she talked to him, and he and his wife promised to behave. I reminded her he was absolutely not invited. She had no right to do that, and she needed to call him back and make that known. Her response? But he's your brother, and to think of the family. To make matters worse, we were receiving a lot of pressure to pay for an open bar, and we don't even drink ourselves, as well as pay for a bigger venue, even though we wanted a small and more intimate wedding. Where was this pressure coming from? Why, none other than my alcoholic mother, who wanted to invite a bunch of relatives I've never met and take advantage of an open bar. Now, here comes the fun part. I was at my wit's end with all this family drama. So, one Monday evening, a couple of months before the wedding, the following conversation took place. I said, "What are you doing tomorrow?" He replied, "Hanging out with you." "Why? Want to get married?" I asked. "Are you serious?" "Heck yeah," he replied. And we did. We eloped with just us and a couple of friends that offered to officiate the wedding that Tuesday evening. We saved thousands upon thousands of dollars, didn't have to deal with all the drama, and had our small and intimate wedding that we wanted. Honestly, I wish we'd done this to begin with. However, as you can imagine, my mother lost her mind. She posted all over Facebook, seeking pity about not being at her daughter's wedding, and how could I do that to her, etc, etc. Funny how she didn't mention any of the above details in her post, and made it all about her wants and woe is me. Even more funny is we would have had the wedding if she'd have just respected our decisions. So no, you don't get to invite unwanted guests, make demands, or get to go to our wedding. Wow, there we go. Yeah, someone commented, dodging bullets like Neo in the Matrix, and I could not agree more. Like, just absolutely ridiculous. Your mother is trying to get her child to pay for an open bar at her wedding just so she can invite all her pals along and they just get smashed. Really? Is that what you want to do at your daughter's wedding? Just get battered and like not remember any of it? What a sad life. Somebody said in the comments, yet another parent who thinks that your wedding is their wedding. You definitely did the right thing. And yeah, that's the thing. She wants to have her day on your day and you pay for it all. Ridiculous. And who cares? Who cares if she's upset? She's kind of shown her true colors. I mean, she already had, but the fact that she's posting all about this on Facebook, trying to get sympathy from people rather than just having a conversation with you. I suppose if she was the sort of person that would have a conversation with you about this, then she'd probably be a better person and this wouldn't have happened in the first place. But yeah, I mean, the Facebook stuff just shows she's just a whiny, horrible woman, I imagine. Yeah, just not really a mother at all. Maybe I'm going too far there. That's just what I think. Somebody else said in the comments, which I love, that conversation with your husband, which was just 4 sentences. I mean, how many words was that in that sentence? That's 5, 10, 14, 19 words were uttered in that one sentence. And after 19 words, you decided to get married. Legendary scenes. And this person says that might go down as a lifetime achievement award, having that conversation with your husband. Amazing. And now, last but not least, the 5th revenge story of this episode. If you're going to steal the catalytics off my truck, you should have checked if they were actually functional first. It was a fun morning at the beginning of last week, starting up my truck and waking everyone up at 2:45 a.m. to learn that someone swiped the hollowed out cats. The idiots missed the neighbor's cameras that basically gave away who they were. It's 2 kids from the area who drive around in a pretty busted up police Crown Vic. I chose not to call the cops. Instead, I called one of my friends, who's code enforcement, and I let him know what my plan was, and he relayed the info to the police that I was finally going to do a nuisance tow on that same Crown Victoria. The car they drive isn't street legal, as it has no license plates or insurance or working taillights, and rattles like trash due to the horrible sound system. They also spend their whole day at a chicken shack smoking. Not sure who they're getting money from, but I'm guessing that stealing catalytics was part of the equation. When I spotted the car sitting on a quiet street, I called it in and got the go-ahead to tow. I took it straight to the police station, and they tried to run an owner check with the VIN number, only to find out that it hadn't been registered since 2011, and the owner was someone other than the kids who sold them the car with no title because of all the back registration owed. The cop said we can go ahead and take it to the junkyard till they can get a black title, aka certificate of destruction. By then, the two idiots were running all around town looking for their car, thinking it had been stolen by one of their friends as a prank. The key lock was so worn out you could start it with any car key. They found it at the junkyard and tried to steal it by one of them distracting the owner and the other stealing the car back, but the junkyard was aware of who they were, so they cut the drive shaft off beforehand. I missed out on this part, but they actually got arrested for trying to steal their car back, and they watched as the junkyard used a crane to rip the car to shreds. When I saw it, the remains looked like a toddler just ripped it to the bare frame out of curiosity. They've been out of jail since, but haven't left their trailer. I did a drive-by earlier, and I noticed a Beta Jeep Liberty in the driveway, also with no plates, and I'm already working with the cops on taking that too, if I see it out in public. Except this time, I won't miss the show. Well, there we go. Rounding things off with just a couple of absolute idiots. The crazy thing is they don't even learn after their first car gets, towed and destroyed. They're like, oh, I don't care, let's just do it again, like just live a sad life again. Like, this is the thing with a lot of these sort of, I suppose, characters or people in these stories. Just complete losers. Like, if anything, I kind of feel bad for some of them, that their lives are just so bad and they just do stuff like this. Like, surely there's more to life than doing this. I don't know. It's also like one of the most trashy forms of theft. Like, who's going around just nicking catalytic converters? Is that actually a thing that people do? Such a weird thing to do. Is there money to be made there? I mean, I assume there is, otherwise they wouldn't do it. But yeah, car thieves, man, just terrible, terrible people. Actually, I mean, we've had, on my road, we've had quite a few cars stolen over the years. It's just crazy. We actually had our number plate stolen from one of our cars about a month or so ago. And you know, I'm going to be honest, it's not my house, my family's house, but we live in a very nice area. Just mental that people do that sort of stuff. But there you go. That is the world we live in. Sadly, I suppose. But what's not sad is that if you've enjoyed this episode and you want more right away, wow, would you believe it? There's another video on screen if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're not, click the link in the description if you're on a podcast platform to listen to even more. Make sure you're subscribed, as I said in the intro, for more content each and every day, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.